Damn, I can't get a good anything. I mean, I want you guys to at least semi be able to see where I'm at. What the fuck? I'm on my bed, if you can't tell, and I'm trying to set up the camera to at least see my face, like, in some sort of general focus area or whatever. Anyways, here I am. It's me, Laura, and I want to talk a little bit about growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Recently, I sent a message to my mom, and that's a big thing, because it was very interesting. I was going on one of my older email accounts, and I talked with somebody in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. Before I started all this, I talked to somebody about what I should do to help out a little bit more, and one of the things that he suggested, I'm not going to name names because I feel like I'm kind of controversial in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. Like, not everybody completely likes me, and that's okay. But yeah, I mean, it's a ragtag group, and it's tough to be an ex-Jehovah's Witness. About as tough as it is to be transgender, I think, in some ways. As far as, like, the whole shunning thing goes, because they get shunned by their families, they lose everything, just for leaving the religion, and that happens to a lot of trans people too. But getting off topic, I feel kind of like I haven't made a video in a while about ex-Jehovah's Witnesses or anything like that. I was talking to somebody at a gathering and at an ex-Jehovah's Witness thing here in Indiana. They call it a Pasta Fest, and it was really cool to see a lot of people that I had known through social media and meet those people. That was pretty cool, even though I was kind of nervous, because I'm just kind of a nervous person, and I deal with social anxiety and things like that, so I'm not quite as open and chill around large groups of people as I am in, here talking to you right now, which is kind of funny. But as far as, me being, I was talking to someone there. I was talking to someone at a Pasta Fest, and just explaining that I started out this channel as JWTgirl, and JWTgirl came later, but my first videos was growing up as one of Jehovah's transsexuals. And I feel like that kind of stigmatized me for a little while in the community, was naming, in both communities actually, because in the trans community, they're like, what the heck is this? Like, why is she associating, our whole thing? Why is she using the word transsexual and associating all these things, with us? And then, in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, I felt like it was a similar thing. Like, okay, well, does she have to include the whole, transsexual thing in there? Why, she is, like, delegitimizing our platform and what the rest of us are doing. And I didn't want to do that, and I feel like that kind of carried along with me, especially in the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses community. The transgender community, I tend to feel that they're a little bit more accepting, or at least they were back a while ago. I eventually did leave because they just have become somewhat of a very culty setup as far as, like, any trans person. And it's understandable with the administration and everything that's going on right now. It's terrible, but the truth is that even before all that, and maybe part of the instigator for all this was that, transgender community was getting somewhat dogmatic and culty, and kind of throwing their ideologies on those ideologies, those culty, dogmatic ideologies that the transgender community created, not being transgender, but just the things that that whole community kind of perpetuated and created on their own, along with feminism. I felt like those things kind of pushed the left, to be more radicalized and pushed a lot of the stuff that's going on, which isn't, doesn't make any of it okay. Doesn't make any of it okay. The white supremacy, the things that happened in Charlottesville, those things, they're all horrible. But as I said, I left the trans community, and I've always tried to stick with the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, because I've always said, out of the two things in my life that I've had to deal with, the thing that was much harder of the two was being a Jehovah's Witness, believe it or not. And part of that comes from another thing that when I was talking with this guy, he asked me about my gender dysphoria, and because I was explaining how not all transgender people do have gender dysphoria, although there's maybe some debate on that. But really, psychologically, not all transgender people have gender dysphoria. It doesn't all affect them. And so he asked me, do you think that, and gender dysphoria, moving on, gender dysphoria is kind of what spurs people mostly to transition. It's not some people transition anyways, but like gender dysphoria is the main reason for medically transitioning and, needing, assistance, and it's the main reason why it's a need to transition for many trans people is gender dysphoria. And so he asked me, is my dysphoria, because of the Jehovah's Witness, knowing what the Jehovah's Witnesses are like with their gender roles, which are very polarized. They expect certain things from men, and they expect certain things from women. And so he asked me if I felt like any of that contributed to my gender dysphoria. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I told him, and I'm honest, like, I'm not even sure, what would have happened with me if I hadn't been raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses and constantly had to deal with those. One, from my mom, who was, I believe, from talking to my dad, I've never gotten this from her, but from talking to different people and remembering how she was, I do think she was an ex-feminist and kind of a man-hater, which is kind of funny. But I do kind of wonder if I hadn't grown up in that, plus, not to say this is what feminism does, but plus the very, very polarized gender roles within the ex-Jehovah's Witness community. I kind of wonder, I think I'm definitely transgender, but I kind of wonder if I would have transitioned, if I would have, my dysphoria would have been aggravated to that point where I felt like I could no longer go on in the gender that I was born as. And so I don't know. I legitimately don't know. I mean, I feel like a woman. I feel like I know this about myself now. But there's no telling, and I do feel like maybe that those very polarized gender roles in the Jehovah's Witnesses do or have had an impact on things like gender dysphoria. And the thing that I say, that I was telling him, which is what I was getting at, is I started out, doing these videos, growing up as one of Jehovah's transsexuals. And the title specifically, I made it to shock people. I made it to shock people because back when I was first coming out of the Jehovah's Witnesses and I was losing my family, I felt like that was and you'll still see ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, plenty of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in the community, going into Kingdom Halls and trying to shock people out of, and it works it works sometimes. And I've talked to other people. When I was younger, I feel like I just go off on tangents because I remember things. But I remember someone coming in the middle of a memorial when someone had died, and I didn't really understand the whole situation. I was kind of young. I was maybe like 10, maybe 13 at the oldest. And I remember someone coming in, someone standing up who was a family member of the person who died, and remarking how she had committed suicide and that it was all of our faults because nobody had been there for her. And I just remember being like, how is it? At the time, being young, I was just kind of confused, because all I had known before, I think I did know that she had committed suicide, but I didn't really quite understand everything around it, and plenty of people had their horrible ways of looking at it back then. Saying how it was a sin that she had done that to herself, and how could she, and then here there was this woman that was standing up and saying this, and I remember one of the elders, calmly trying to get her to sit down, and she did eventually, I think, leave, and that was it. But I still remember that to this day, and I am sure that those little things add up. I am sure that those little things that I heard here and there were shocking to me, that shocked me out of that cult mentality, all added up to me eventually coming out, which I want to retell that story. But I'm thinking about all of this stuff now, rethinking about it, because I did that when I left the cult. About 2 years later, I was fading slowly out of the cult. I faded slowly, and then eventually I came out as an apostate, and then like about a year later, after coming out as an apostate, I started transitioning. And I always wanted to do YouTube videos because I had some people on YouTube that I greatly respected, and I never went through with it until I started transitioning, because I think I decided to finally do it when I started transitioning because it just seemed like the right time. It seemed like, okay, I can shock my family with this information that I am transitioning now. And it, honestly, to me, here's the thing, is that I did inform my family. It's not like I didn't inform them before posting these videos. But the majority of the congregation, obviously, I didn't, and they didn't know. And to me, that was good. That was not just the fact that, I had just informed my family not that long, and then now I'm going to start making these videos to try and show where I'm at, and push different things into people's eyes that they just couldn't, they can't consider in that cult. That was my goal. And ever since then, I continue to get emails. I don't know if the shock value really worked for my friends or family. It doesn't seem to have very much. But I have since then gotten email after email after email from other people in the cult who feel they're transgender, or, people that grew up in the cult that remember it and are transgender. I think it's somewhat of, not a common thing, but I think I would say that probably more common than the general population. It'd be very interesting to see what the correlations are there. But yeah, so I did that. And it was shocking, I think, not just for Jehovah's Witnesses, but ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as well. And I do feel like it was kind of taken as, some people really praised me. Some people really thought it was a great thing. And I did gain a lot of followers, not just from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, but from the transgender community. I gained a lot of followers, but all my followers, of all my followers, it was just, there was plenty there still that just, I think, felt that I was taking something and running with it and being disrespectful in a way on both sides. And, if anybody that sees this video, I apologize for that. Like, I really wasn't thinking about it at the time. I was really just thinking about, trying to do my part. And again, I'm not apologizing for being trans. I'm apologizing for maybe not doing things as delicately as maybe I should have. I don't know. Not many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are delicate, so I mean it just is. But for those that I think that are like, hey, you're that trans, I talk to people sometimes and they're like, oh, you're that T-girl, they're that transgender, she-male that came out not that long ago and did videos, right? And then that's about the extent of our conversation. To those people, I don't know what to say to them other than, I'm sorry you hate me. Haters are gonna hate, I guess. But if it's not about that, if it's more about, because I always try to think the best. If it's more about, feeling like something was taken that wasn't supposed to be taken, or, done the wrong way, not, I can apologize for that. That's no problem for me. So, yeah. But I did those videos and they helped people. And like I said, I still get emails telling me that I've helped this person or that person, that grew up in the Jehovah's Witnesses, and, thanking me for everything I've done. And so, I mean, I have felt like I've done something, but I feel like I haven't done enough maybe for the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, or that I overstepped my bounds from the beginning. So yeah, that's basically where I'm at. And moving forward, I started this talking about a letter that I sent to my mom, and it is now, I'm now about 20 minutes in, and obviously this is probably going to be edited, but the letter that I sent my mom, when I originally came out, I sent a letter to my mom, and that letter was saying, was telling her everything that I was doing with my transition, everything, that I felt about growing up and being trans, and how I could never tell her growing up, and I could never tell anybody. And I'm going to go through all of that again in the coming videos. But the point is that I sent this letter to her, and she came back basically saying that I should have been able to tell her that I was somehow to blame for not feeling safe to come to her and tell her how I felt. And at the time, I just didn't know what to say to that. And I started writing a response to the letter, and it was quite good. But it was so angry about that, about what she said that I guess I never sent it because I looked, and I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I never sent it, but I just kind of forgot because I did keep on with her on the phone and things like that. And my brother did too. So it's not like I never talked to her again. But I realized that I had never sent that message. And so I decided the other day I was going to go ahead and send it. And it was good, I think, for me to send it because my mother, I believe, well, I know my mother, she's always been, from the very beginning of my life, she hasn't just been a Jehovah's Witness, but also just an extremely manipulative person. And it's taken me a long time to come to grips with the fact that the things that she said about people in my house, the way she treated the males in my house, probably, at least for me, because my brother's gay and I'm trans, at least for me, I think my mom seemed more accepting of my brother, but less accepting of me. She always seemed like she was unsure what to make of me. And, that I think that's pretty strong testimony to the fact that I'm not just gay. I'm very different from my brother. And, all I can say is that if there had been an open environment where I hadn't felt like I had to be a certain way and that so much was expected of me, and not just that, but not being able to just be myself, like in the most simple ways, like being yelled at. I remember being yelled at for dressing up with my sister, and I loved it, and I was yelled at for it. I remember it. I remember my mom coming in and saying never to do that again, that Jehovah hates that, and that, this is something horrible to do. And another time I just remember telling her that I wanted to be a girl, that I felt like I was a girl, and her just freaking out over that. And in the letter, she says that the original letter that she sent back to mine, she says that she doesn't remember any of this. And I find that hard to believe. But even if it is, like, it doesn't change anything. Like, I do remember these things. And even if my memory is flawed, the fact that I did not feel safe to push this, to say, this is me. The fact that I know when I discovered the term trans, and I felt like from that point on, I was doomed to Armageddon. I was in 5th grade. What a fucking horrible thing to do to a little kid. And I'm not saying all of that is my mom's fault. It's the cult's fault. And this is something I've only recently come to terms with. This is something I've only recently understood about myself. And it's because when I left and started doing my transition, started, dealing with that, which I had to do my transition. I basically broke down from dysphoria. There was really not much of another option. And so when I decided to go ahead with my transition, and I went with it, I had a lot of other things to worry about. Lots of things happened when I decided to transition, and most of that can be found on this channel. And finally, you know, I went from thing to thing to thing, dealing with issue after issue after issue after transitioning, that I never really got, I feel, never really got to heal and understand the impact, the great impact that this horrible, horrible cult had on me growing up. It was just completely lost to me for a while. The parts of my personality that it had affected and that it was still affecting me afterwards, it's just unbelievable to realize it now that I'm here and I'm living day to day, taking care of family things and just living life, and being able to see these things for real. Like, it's just unbelievable. So, yeah, I think this is where I'm gonna end the video. Maybe next video I will read the letter that I sent to my mother. The second one. Maybe the first one too, I'm not sure. Or maybe I'll just start, maybe that's where I will start. I'll start there with my story and just retell. I'm gonna try, I think, when I come back to do the whole story in one video. And I'm gonna kind of outline it and get it so that I can, you know, and get out my good recording equipment and do it right. So I can get it out there once and feel like I've contributed in a non-vloggy, you know, which plenty of ex-Jehovah's, but for the size of my channel and having not touched on this stuff so much ever since, I think it's kind of sad that I haven't. So it's something that I want to do, to get this stuff out there. And so yeah, that'll be my next video that I share. I really hope people keep their eyes on things going on in the Jehovah's Witnesses in the world today. That's going to be what I leave you with this video, is that you just keep your eye on all the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses putting their story out on YouTube. Now that you know this was the beginning of this channel. If you're a subscriber, you should know that's how this channel began. It's not a secret, but I think maybe many people think, maybe some people or many people, I don't know. Many of the subscribers may not understand this. And this is not hate. This is not, you know, we hate Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a cult, and they have practices that need to change because they're criminal. This is not about hurting Jehovah's Witnesses. This is about changing the issues, the problems. And you know, calling out the issues, just like Leah Remini did on her A&E special about Scientology. This is the same type of thing that Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, are doing. So keep your eye on it. Look up the Australian Royal Commission. Look up JW Victims, JW Facts, and I will get back to you. Take care, guys.